And it is time for the pre-show. Hi, everybody. We've got about 10 minutes before we get started with today's N10-008 Network Plus study group. That's quite a bit. Okay, this is rolling up here. We are recording down here. We are recording, well, we're not recording up there, but you're seeing it up there. So everything looks good right now. All of the time I spent over the last month changing out cables and things, I think it's worked for the best. I think it's all working. Let's check our cameras. Cameras look good. You can kind of see it over my head here. All four of those look really good. Hi, chat room. Hey, everybody. We'll get started here in about 9 minutes. 9 minutes. And we'll get things going. I think I pretty much got everything ready here. There is all N10-008 Network Plus questions today. All Network Plus. Well, the first hour is me giving you the questions. The second hour is you asking questions of me. So we just keep the camera on for the after show. Hope everybody's doing well. We're well into January at this point. New Year's seems like ages ago. There's so much that's gone on in the last 12 days. It has been crazy busy, which is great. It's always good. But boy, it shifts gears from the holiday season, the new year, and then suddenly you're right back into it again. Full steam, like really, really full steam. There's a lot going on. So, but that's good. And have I lost my sponsor? No. Do I have a sponsor? That would be nice if I was, sponsored. I don't think I am, though. I don't think I would take a definite sponsor. It would have to be really something to do a sponsor here. I don't mind doing my family members. I don't mind doing people I know. But it's difficult. Unless it's something I really use and I really like. That's the only time. You won't see me do, here's my favorite mobile app game thing. Those are only slightly annoying in the middle of a live stream. I try to at least keep everything going straight forward. We've got lots to do today. I think it's good that the N10-008 was released last year because it's locked in at this point. And if you're studying for the 007, would this live stream help? It might. There are a number of questions that overlap. It would give you some perspective. Perhaps more focused effort would be to go back over the last 3 years of 007 study groups and watch those. Those obviously would have the best possible connection to your 007 exam. The ones we do today, some of the questions might apply to 007. Some of them might apply to only 008. So you've at least got the option there. Camera check real quick. This is not even ready to go. Get this full screen. I think we're in good shape. Ernie says he's been studying for the Network Plus, and you need to purchase all my content today. Yes, you do. Ernie, you need to purchase everything if it makes sense for what you're doing. We've got it there and ready for you. So if you need course notes, if you need the offline videos and that type of thing, they are definitely there. And then there are the other things on my for 007. I think some of the CompTIA books are out there on the site. I need to do a better job at bringing those forward so you can see what all the options are. We're working on that. That's another one of the many things that we have that I want to make you aware of. I got to work on that. Ernie's making a career change at 45, going into IT. Well, this is just tons of fun. This is an amazing business to be in. So I think you're making a good decision. I don't even know what you're moving from, but I'm just the success you can have in IT is just so different than anything else that's out there. Why wouldn't you? It's a lot of fun. If you're studying for 008, would you benefit from buying my 007 practice exams? Well, you have two problems. One, First, it would not. You should never study from materials that don't match the version of the exam that you're trying to take. And secondly, I don't have any 007 practice exams. There you go. So you're a loser either way, as they say, as the song says. The song doesn't say that, but you know what I'm saying. Neither one of those applies. So it sort of answers the question, though, which is harder to pass for beginners, 007 or 008? They're about the same. As far as the difficulty level, they are about the same. Now, what we have now, from the perspective of the at least the study materials, the books, the videos, and the other things that are out on the market, you could probably do either one of those right now. So, is there an ETA on the practice exam set? Yeah, well, I am tentatively scheduling it for the year of 2022. That's when I would like to have them done. So we're talking about months from now when you would ever see anything like that. But I would love to get them done this year. So that gives you that should at least give you some perspective. There's no formal date because I don't know what's going to happen in my life between now and next week, between now and tomorrow. So we'll figure it out. Okay. Got a new earbud, in-ear monitor, IEM. Got a new one. It all works now. Both ears are working. The other one broke. It broke in two. And I went out to the Amazon and bought just the replacement for one side because they have a clip they attach in. So I was able just to buy the single IEM. It arrived in like 2 days, which is not happening for my other Amazon things. Well, it turns out it was a third party. It wasn't shipped from Amazon. It was drop shipped from somewhere else, which is why Amazon's having challenges with. We've now gotten used to it. Our Amazon Prime, you mean their 5-day shipping? Yeah, 5-day shipping. That's what that is. We haven't even gotten started. Joe in the chat room with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you, Joe. Not even a question, no comments. Joe's just like, here's some love. I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you. It's one of those things. If you're watching the video here live, you can see there is a super chat option at the bottom if it's available in your country. There's also, if you're watching this on replays, there's a super thanks is what they call it on the YouTube. So you can effectively do a super chat after the fact with just the videos that happen to be there, which is nice too. It is not required. It is not a must do, but it sure does go a long way. So thank you, Joe. We really do appreciate your support. So we've got lots to go through today. We've got 2 minutes left as we go through today. I feel like we just got things going on the pre-show. I'm still trying to get my feet underneath me, but we are really ready to go. I just need to hit the button. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Joe says, just got A+ certified. Not thanks to me. You're the one that did the exam. So congratulations, Joe, on that A+ certification. That's a tough one. The 2 exams, so broad, so much you have to remember for those. Challenging in and of themselves. What is that? I'm going to have to turn on a few extra things on my phone to make things quieter. 008 being required. Is 007 still good? We'll stick around, and sometime in the next 5 minutes or so, we will be answering that question once and for all. Well, not once and for all, but one of the many times and for all. So we'll do that. You will. I address that first thing because that's a good question. That's an important question, and we will go through all of that. I'm attending ASU, getting a degree in IT. Is it worth it to take the Network Plus exam as I'll be studying in school for another 3 years? Well, I guess it depends on what you want to do with that. Normally, we get these certifications so that you can then have something to put on your resume. So maybe getting it done before you get out of school would be nice. Or if you just finished up a networking course, maybe that's a good time to take it because it's fresh in your mind. I think that would be a good way to do it. All right, everybody. We got top of the hour. Let's see if I have all of my ducks in a row. I think I do. I think we're just about ready to get started. Let's start this on this. Let's bring up the keynote over here. Keynote, there it is. That looks good. My machine even said, my Discord even said, hey, there's stuff happening right now. Let's do that. Let's bring back up to my Keynote. I need a green light. There's my play button. And let's do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2022 Professor Messer Network Plus study group. It's our N10-008 Network Plus study group. We'll talk about those versions in just a moment. Thank you for being here. We are so glad to be able to do these study groups. If you're watching live, you can even participate live. We'll tell you in a moment how you can do that. But this is for our N10-008 Network Plus exam. We'll talk about the differences between the 7 and 8 in just a moment. So if you are here to learn anything about networking from that exam, you are in the right place. In this first hour, we will talk about all of the different questions that I've put together for you. And in the second hour, I'll open up questions in the chat room and we'll get some other questions answered from there. You can pretty much ask anything in the after show, and I try to address those things as well. We've got a lot to go through today. If you are watching live, you can participate by opening a new browser window and browsing over to professormesser.com/QA. There will be a question waiting for you on the screen. We'll tell you what that question is in just a moment. There's also an app you can use. It is the Socrative Student app from your favorite app store. And if you use that app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. You do that, and you've got plenty that you will find there. You just stay on that page, and the questions will change as we go. If you do all of that, a question will be there that asks, a network administrator would like to be informed each time a network link is disabled. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be top-of-rack switching, trap, LDAP, TCP flag, or clientless VPN? As always, you can go to professormesser.com/QA to answer the question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're in the middle of our exam. So we will come back to this question in just a moment. Thank you for being here. We've got so much to go through today. Of course, when we're not doing these live streams, we have all of our new videos out on YouTube all the time. Feel free to subscribe there by visiting professormesser.com/YouTube and click the subscription button there. Much appreciated. If you would like a weekly Network Plus pop quiz question, you can find that either on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter, or you get a pretty picture version on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. Well, as we sit here in January of 2022, there are two different Network Plus exams that you could take. You only need to take one of these. Let's step through what each one of these happens to be. The first one is the N10-007. This is an exam that has been around since March of 2018, and it will be retired in June of this year. So as we sit here in January, you've got half of January, February, March, April, May, June. So really about 4.5 months to complete your studies. So if you're in the middle of studying for this exam, you are working towards getting this exam done with the N10-007, then you can continue studying. This is exactly where you should be. You've got plenty of time, so keep studying the N10-007 and earn your Network Plus certification. The exam itself is 90 minutes long with a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90, and you have to score 720 on a scale from 100 to 900, and you'll see a combination of multiple choice and what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. We'll talk about performance-based questions in just a bit. Now, there is, as I mentioned, another exam available you could take. This is a newer version of the exam. This newer exam is called the N10-008. This was released in September, last September, 2021. So it's relatively new. It's only been out a number of months at this point. The estimated retirement date for the N10-008, probably March timeframe of 2025. That's an estimate, but that's probably gives you an idea that you've got plenty of time before that particular exam happens to go away. Now, the real question, and it's already been asked in the chat room today, which one do you take? Do you take the 007? Do you take the 008? And the answer right now as we sit is either one works. There's a lot of good materials already available and out on the market for the N10-008. So if you had asked in September, I would have told you take the 007. You got plenty of ramp. There's no books out for the N10-008. There's no videos, courses, very few video courses available for the 008. But things have changed in the last 5 or 6 months. And now we have a lot of courses available, a lot of books, a lot of study materials. And I would say the N10-008 is just as viable or useful to start your studies with as the 007. Now, if you're already studying for the 007, keep doing that. There's no reason to jump over and have to redo everything. For example, on the 008, about 40% of the exam is new content. So it's not easy to move from one to the other. If you're working on the 007, stick with the 007. If you're starting right now, maybe you want to consider taking the 008. Either way, regardless of which exam you take, you earn exactly the same certification. So someone who passes their 008 earns a Network Plus. Someone who passes their 007 earns exactly the same Network Plus. There's no difference between the certification that you earn. These numbers are just referring to the exams. So that's why I always tell people, don't wait around and don't delay your studies because you think one version might be better than another, because it isn't better than the other. The end result is exactly the same. And it's more important that you get certified now so that you can put those credentials in your pocket, so that you can put them on your CV, on your resume, and be able to show an employer that you know these skills and that you are certified with your Network Plus certification. Hopefully that answers your question about, do I take the 007 or do I take the 008? But I'm more than happy to go through additional questions in the after show. Stick around the after show. You're able to ask questions of any kind. I'm more than happy to go through those. If you are studying for your 007 or your 008, I have plenty of materials available on my website. Of course, every single one of my videos is available for you to watch for free. You can go out to YouTube or my site and simply start watching the entire course. Everything is there. Nothing is behind a paywall. You don't have to pay anything extra. You don't have to register. You won't get annoying emails. You just watch the videos. What could be easier? There is also offline materials as well. This is my Success Bundle. That includes everything I make for the Network Plus. There is the Network Plus course notes, the Exam Hacks ebook. Everything that's a video is now downloadable. All my audio from those videos is now available as MP3 files. And there are more things out there as well. We're always adding on to this list. You can find more information on this at professormesser.com/netsuccess, or go to my website and you'll see pull down menus for the 007 and 008. And you can choose which set of success bundles or study materials applies to the version of the exam that you are planning to take. Find out more at professormesser.com/netsuccess. If you're watching this live stream live, well, thanks for being here. Many of you watch the live stream on a replay afterwards. I have two versions of a replay. The video version of this replay is available to watch on YouTube immediately afterwards. It takes a minute or two to render, and then it's available on YouTube automatically. Some of you like to have an audio version, and I create my audio version of this live stream in podcast format. You can find the links in the RSS feeds for that at professormesser.com/podcast, and you can simply add it to the podcast listening program that's on your particular device. That is the audio version for my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. There's different RSS feeds for each one of those. You can also go to YouTube and watch the YouTube video replay of this. The video replay also includes, in the video description, a set of timestamps that tells you exactly the questions and the answers, so you can jump exactly to where you would like to go. You'll find that in the video description, and it's created by my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching the replay of this. Everybody say hi to Lori. She has to listen to this whole thing, usually in 2x speed. So she's running through it, making notes, and usually takes her about a day to put those on there. So now you have years of these timestamps to go back and look at, which is really great if you're looking for something in particular. We also have a chat room on Discord. Our Discord server is always available. So I'm not live streaming all day, every day, because I'm not on Twitch, I guess. I made a bad decision and ended up doing this instead of playing video games all day, which probably would have been more fun for me, although probably not as useful for your certification efforts. So when I'm not doing these live streams, I'm on Discord. So you can head over to Discord and chat with other people that are there. And I'm usually in there as well. If you have a question or a direct message you want to send me, it's a great place to do it. And join up at professormesser.com/Discord. I'll also let you know that eventually you're going to need to take this Network Plus exam. Instead of going out to the Pearson VUE website or the CompTIA website and paying full price for your voucher, why not get a discount? I've already built discounts in and put them on my website at professormesser.com/vouchers. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to hunt around the internet for a discount. You don't need to add some type of additional piece of software into your browser. All these extensions get to be a little bit crazy. All you have to do is just visit professormesser.com/vouchers, and they're already discounted. What could be easier? And if you buy the vouchers from my site, I also give you a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook for free. So it just comes with the voucher. Normally, you would only get that in my Success Bundle because I don't sell the Exam Hacks ebook directly. You can't buy it. You can only get it with the vouchers or with the Success Bundles. You can find out more at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get a discount off your voucher, it also helps what we're doing here. So I think that's a win-win for everybody. And there are no plans for a Twitch stream. For those of you asking in the chat room, we're not doing any Twitch streams anytime soon. I'll wait until maybe finally finish some of these courses I'm working on, even if that happens. I'm not sure anybody wants to see me do anything with a video game because I guarantee you it's going to be bad. Nobody wants that. Unless you really do, and if you do, let me know. And maybe we'll turn it on one night just to have some fun. The idea of these questions, though, are things that at least apply back to the Network Plus exam. Let's look at this, what I call the rewind question we went through today. This rewind question asked, a network administrator would like to be informed each time a network link is disabled. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it top-of-rack switching, trap, LDAP, TCP flag, or clientless VPN? Let's see how you answered this list. 59% of you say it's a trap. We have 26% of you that say it's a TCP flag. 11% said it's LDAP. 3% said top-of-rack switching, and 0% said clientless VPN. This is 61%. It's a pretty good number as a trap. You must have been here last month when we talked about traps and their use when you are using Simple Network Management Protocol, or SNMP. SNMP is usually something where you're polling a device and it's returning an answer to a query that you made. But one of the features of SNMP is on many devices, you can set a trap. And that trap is really just an alarm or alert. Why we called it a trap, I don't know, but we did. If you have in your mind, oh, it's creating an alert, a proactive message being sent back to you so you don't have to constantly monitor. The device itself is simply going to tell you when that particular level of whatever you're monitoring hits that particular threshold. So, for instance, you may tell your device, if you ever see the number of CRC errors increase by 5, send me a message that happened so that I will proactively know something is going wrong on that particular interface. This is also something that can be sent back to a management station. It can be automated. There's lots that you can do with these SNMP traps. They're very powerful and, in my opinion, probably not used as well as they probably should be in many organizations. We just don't have time to set up all the traps and decide what to monitor. And by the time you've gone through the process of doing that, you've now been pulled off on some other project. It really does help if you're able to spend time and define these traps for you. That is the right answer, an SNMP trap. If you answered B, the 63% of you got that one absolutely right. Top-of-rack switching is an architecture that puts a switch at the top of all of these racks in your data center. That doesn't have anything to do with informing you when a network link is disabled. LDAP is a directory access protocol, the lightweight version of the directory access protocol. It's a directory services on your network. It also doesn't inform you when there's a particular problem on your network. TCP flags are built into the protocol of TCP, and they also have nothing to do with disabling network links. And a clientless VPN, 0% of you chose that one. Everybody realizes what VPNs do these days. Not exactly what you should be worrying about when you're trying to determine if a network link has been disabled. Trap is the right answer. B, 63% of you got that right. Well, that particular question is one that we did last month, so it should look familiar to you. If you weren't here last month, then it was new. But of course, during every study group, the first new question is always a performance-based question. As I mentioned earlier, when you take the exam, you have to go through performance-based questions. You'll probably get a handful of performance-based questions at the beginning of your exam, and then the rest of the exam is multiple choice, like this one. Multiple choice was the one we just did, where you've got a question and there are multiple choices that you can select. Performance-based questions are anything but multiple choice. They might be matching, they might be fill in the blank, they might put you to a command prompt, there might be a scenario where you have to do drag and drops. There could be a lot of different things on these performance-based, but they are always based on the exam objectives. So if you know your exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You're going to know the answer in any scenario. So I have for you this month's brand new performance-based question. This one is a question, I would say it's a fill in the blank. I guess you could think of it also as a matching question as well, or even a drag and drop if you want to look at it that way. This is one asking about the OSI model. This question asks very simply, specify the OSI layer. And I have 5 different scenarios where I would like you to tell me what these layers are. The first is a firewall administrator blocks all TCP/22 traffic. The second is a file transfer utility shows the message backup complete. The third is a switch is configured to use STP. The fourth is a workstation subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. And the last one is a fiber optic signal is repeated after 2 kilometers. Now, if you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's right there on your screen, and lock in your answers. Please don't put answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. This is one where now we have to decide, and all of these might be the same layer. What if you thought all of these were layer 1? You could put A1, B1, C1, D1, E1. You're done. So there might be multiple times. You might see the same layer listed multiple times in this list, or they might all be different. I don't know. We'll have to see. Specify the OSI layer. A firewall administrator blocks all TCP/22 traffic. A file transfer utility shows the message backup complete. A switch is configured to use STP. A workstation subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. And a fiber optic signal is repeated after 2 kilometers. If you think you know the answer, lock it in, professormesser.com/QA. Now, earlier in the chat, I do want to mention, thanks to Tim in the chat with a $5 super chat. Tim says, hi, Professor Messer. Want to say big thanks for your CompTIA A+ help. You're very welcome. Passed with flying colors within 6 weeks for both exams, which tells me that Tim has been doing nothing but A+ studying for the last 6 weeks. Congratulations on first passing both of those exams. Secondly, passing them in a very aggressive time frame. And it sounds like you did very well. Flying colors is always good to hear. So congratulations on your new A+, and thank you also for the $5 super chat, Tim. We sure appreciate it. Let's go through this list of OSI layers and let's see what our options are. We'll start with the very first one that asks or says, a firewall administrator blocks all TCP/22 traffic. Well, that's certainly typical of a firewall administrator setting rules on the firewall to be able to block traffic. In this case, blocking a particular TCP port number. And if you're familiar with the OSI model, you know that the TCP port numbers are all at layer 4. That's the one that is specifying that TCP/22 traffic. That's where the operation is happening in the OSI model. So if you said layer 4, that is the correct answer for that option A. Option B is a file transfer utility shows the message backup complete. Backup complete. Well, it's telling me that on the screen. I see a message on my screen. It says backup complete. That's the application informing me that something has happened or something has completed. And if it's the application, then it is layer 7 of the OSI model. Third on our list is a switch is configured to use spanning tree protocol. That's what STP is the spanning tree protocol. The spanning tree protocol, incredibly useful for preventing loops on a switch network. And if you're someone who is using a switch network, you're familiar with switch networks and making sure that they don't loop, that's a pretty important thing to know about. That all happens at layer 2 because it is STP. It's dealing with switching. It's dealing with MAC addresses. It is a layer 2 function, all working along the lines of that switch. That is the answer for a switch configured to use STP. Next on the list is D. A workstation subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. Why I chose a question with a lot of 255s in it, I can't answer that right now. But I do know, since we're talking about an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway, or anything dealing with those IP addresses, we're talking about OSI layer 3. And then lastly on our list is a fiber optic signal is repeated after 2 kilometers. Anytime you're taking a signal, you are taking the signal in, you're reconstructing it, making it stronger, and sending it out the other side. That's what a repeater does. That is all occurring down at the physical layer of the network, or layer 1. So here is our OSI layers. Firewall administrator blocking all TCP/22 traffic is operating at OSI layer 4. A file transfer utility showing the message backup complete is an application operating at layer 7. A switch is configured to use STP. That's a switch that is operating at layer 2. A workstation subnet mask is 255.255.255.192. That's a layer 3 address. And then a fiber optic signal is repeated after 2 kilometers. You're now working at the signal of the physical layer, layer 1. If you got those absolutely correct, then you're probably very familiar with the OSI model at this point. If any of these seemed confusing, off base, not quite what you were expecting, or you may thought it fits into a different OSI model, I highly recommend you go out and look at my OSI video. That's probably the best place to go. This is a good question that applies both to the 007 and 008. So regardless of which exam you're taking, this is the one you should really focus on. Those are the ones that are probably the most common to be discussed or displayed on your exams. So make sure you're familiar with all of those different OSI layers. You'll notice I do avoid giving layer 5 and layer 6. Those 2 OSI layers are very specific in what they provide, and in many ways very confusing. And often when we are describing layers 5, 6, and 7, we kind of group them together. And I tend not to describe 5 and 6 and really go straight to 7, because you really understand what's happening when you talk about an application doing things at layer 7. So I avoid discussing 5 and 6 for that reason. And I think for the purposes of your studies, you can kind of group 5, 6, and 7 together. Although there are specific things that do occur with layer 5 and layer 6, especially encryption, encapsulation, some other things. Make sure you go through the videos and at least understand those. But because they are a little vague, I don't tend to see them a lot on questions. The questions you get in your exam will be very obvious. There won't be any vagueness to those questions. If you're on your exam and you feel that a question is vague, I suspect maybe you don't understand the topic well enough to know exactly what it's trying to point you towards. So that's why. And although people are mentioning the TCP/IP model in the chat room, the TCP/IP model effectively doesn't exist. Nobody uses it. The only time I think you ever see it is in a class that talks about the TCP/IP model. We don't use it in practical terms. You'll never hear anybody discuss it. It's never a conversation you have with someone. So that's why you also notice the TCP/IP model not part of the Network Plus certification, because it effectively isn't used. It does not exist for the, I mean, it does exist. It's a real thing, but we never talk about it. It's like talking about token ring. It's like talking about ATM networks at this point. It just doesn't, it's not used in practical parlance. So I don't discuss it either. It's relatively worthless in the world of understanding what's going on. For some reason, we've all decided the OSI model is the perfect way to describe this, and we've never been talked out of it yet. Maybe someday we'll all decide, you know what, we should talk about this in TCP/IP model terms, and at that point, we'll all convert over. Until then, it's the OSI model for you. Let's do another question. I have a multiple choice question for you next. This multiple choice question asks, let me click it on my side so you can see it. An administrator is designing a network for applications to communicate directly to their associated cloud services. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Is that a CAN, SD-WAN, MGRE, MPLS, or PAN? An administrator is designing a network for applications to communicate directly to their associated cloud services. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Is it CAN, SD-WAN, MGRE, MPLS, or PAN? If you think you know the answer, there's your link on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in that answer, and let's see how you do. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. If you're on the app, the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it exactly that way, all one word, and you'll be in that room. You'll be able to see these on your app. This is the challenge. The OSI people are saying the TCP/IP model is a better model. My argument is actually it's a worse model to describe what's going on. The IP model, plus there are a bunch of different flavors for a model that we don't use. There are more versions of the IP model, the TCP/IP model, than you might even realize. There's like 10 or 12 different versions, which is so pointless. How did we come up with 12 versions of a model we don't even use? I have no idea. Maybe it's not 12 different versions, but it's certainly a handful of different versions. It makes no sense at all. We don't use it. We never talk about it. It's not discussed. Everything is the OSI model. And it is, in my opinion, a better model because it does get into more detail. You got 7 layers to work with. You've got more granularity. So you can kind of focus in on specific pieces. And since there's one version of the OSI model, so we don't have a lot of confusion about what we would be using for this one. See if you happen to know this question, though, since this, by the way, definitely an N10-008 question. This is not one you would find on the N10-007. In fact, you'll notice terms on here that if you're taking the 007 are terms you've never seen, that's just the way it works. That's just how we work along those lines. Let's see how you did with this one, though. The question again asks, an administrator is designing a network for applications to communicate directly to their associated cloud services. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be CAN, SD-WAN, MGRE, MPLS, or PAN? All real things. And as we look at the results, 46% of you say it's SD-WAN, 16% said MGRE, 16% said MPLS, 14% said CAN, effectively a three-way tie for second, I would say. And then last place, 8%, single digits for PAN, P-A-N. Well, if you were putting together a network, especially cloud services, we used to have all these services that are running in our data center. We would have email servers in our data center. We would have file servers in our data center. And we stuck them out in the cloud. Well, now how do we communicate to these cloud-based services if they're no longer at our sites and in our data center? We need to have some way to now communicate out to the cloud, but we've got these services in many different parts of the cloud. Email's over there. File storage is over here. Imaging is over here. We just separate everything because it's the cloud. So one of the ways that we needed to improve on this is to create a method of wide area network connectivity that understood the cloud services and could properly route the application traffic to the appropriate cloud service. That is software-defined networking in a wide area network, or SD-WAN. So instead of everyone communicating back to the data center and then maybe having the data center figuring out where to go, why not having everyone at a remote site, since they're already connected to the internet, just talk directly out to the service that's out on the WAN? Very useful to have this functionality. Very powerful wide area network to be able to implement. It has a level of complexity associated with it that we traditionally have not had in the WAN. And because of that, it's much more powerful than the wide area networks that we used to use in the past. It is the cloud that has brought these along. It's the cloud that has enabled us to create these types of networks. And they are very, very powerful and provide our users with the best possible access to these cloud-based services. If you answered SD-WAN, you've picked exactly the right answer. 48% of you chose SD-WAN. There were other options on here. MGRE is a type of tunnel that we would create, especially used with things like an IPsec configuration. The MGRE would not be something that would allow us to communicate directly to cloud services. Certainly not the best choice for setting up connectivity to cloud services. SD-WAN would be a much better choice than creating separate static MGRE tunnels to be able to send that traffic. We have 15% said MPLS. MPLS, certainly a popular wide area network connectivity. It's one that we have traditionally used in the past, but it doesn't have any hooks in it that allow us to send data to particular cloud-based services. So not a good choice when one of your other choices that's available is SD-WAN. MPLS, certainly a very powerful and useful wide area network. It's that cloud-based and the ability to tell where the service needs to go that SD-WAN brings to the table. We have a CAN, a campus area network. If you have a facility, maybe a building or multiple buildings in a particular area, then you have a campus. Certainly colleges, college campus, and organizations, corporations have campuses as well, and they connect all of their buildings together using a campus area network. Often it's easy if you can put in your own fiber in the ground, run it through a conduit, now you can connect all those buildings up. And lastly, a personal area network. If you're using earbuds, if you're using a wireless speaker, if you're doing anything with Bluetooth and your mobile devices, that's almost always going to be a personal area network or a PAN. In this case, the only answer, the best answer is the SD-WAN. Answer B, 48% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. I've got a question, another multiple choice based question for you. Let's see if you know this technology. And this is one that also applies. Now we can shift back to 007 and 008. This question asks, a network administrator is configuring LACP on a switch port. Which of the following would best describe this setting? Link aggregation, port mirroring, loop prevention, flow control, or flood prevention? A network administrator is configuring LACP on a switch port. Which of the following would best describe this setting? Is it link aggregation, port mirroring, loop prevention, flow control, or flood prevention? If you think you know the answer, follow that link on your page, professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be right there. As people in the chat room are mentioning, there are other definitions of CAN that are out there. Usually when you see CAN being used in terms of microcontrollers within automobiles or other connectivity in that way, it's usually a CAN bus is the way the network is described, which is a controller-based network. Very common to see that in cars, for example. Your car has a very complex network inside of it with tons of sensors and tons of CPUs. It's constantly monitoring what's going on. There are sensors in your brakes. There's sensors inside of your tires. There are sensors in the engine. There's sensors in your air conditioner. There's sensors in your radio. There's sensors in the rest of the car. They're all connected together with a CAN bus. It's a bus-based network that all of these controllers are connected to. This way, they're all able to gather information and react. For example, if we're monitoring the tires and we're monitoring the brakes and we hit the brakes in a storm, instead of us sliding down the road with our brakes locked up, we can have anti-lock brakes that are being monitored as to how well they're operating in real time using that CAN bus network. Incredibly important network to have in our devices. So you might see it, a CAN, really described as CAN bus, would also, I imagine it would also apply there. It still doesn't apply back to using cloud-based services, however. So I think both of those would apply. Either one of those. I'll take either definition for those wrong answers. Well done. At least somebody remembers those exam objectives. Nice job, Very 08. We appreciate that. Let's do another. Let's go through this answer, rather. We haven't even gone through the answer. Here is the question again. A network administrator is configuring LACP on a switch port. Which of the following would best describe this setting? Is it link aggregation, port mirroring, loop prevention, flow control, or flood prevention? All real things, all things you should know, but you can see that 76% of you say that's link aggregation. That seems to be a very strong number. 12%, the only other double digit, way down at 12% for port mirroring, which is also a useful utility on a switch port. And then single digits for flow control, loop prevention, and flood prevention. Everybody seemed to fit on the link aggregation side. Some people refer to this as port bonding. Some of it just talk about a lag. Hey, have you configured that lag? You're thinking, what? You don't configure a lag. You deal with lag because that creates slowdown. No, that's not the lag you're talking about. You're talking about an LAG, or link aggregation. It's what lag happens to be. This is where you can have multiple links between devices, but instead of using them as individual links, you can tell the switch, I would like you to bond all of those interfaces together. And instead of having 4 separate 10 gig connections that I would then have to send different types of data over, why don't we combine them? And now we have 40 gig of throughput between those particular switches. That's the beauty of link aggregation. There is a control protocol that is used for these switches to be able to send traffic to each other so that they both know what's going on. How many ports do you have set up in your lag? Well, here's what I have set up. How many ports are set up in your lag? I have this configuration. Okay, we're synced up. If any one of those disappears, if we want to send some updates across, we will send it using a control protocol called the Link Aggregation Control Protocol, or LACP. Sometimes people will perhaps incorrectly refer to this as an LACP connection. That's not exactly true. It really is a lag that is using LACP as the control part. You could set up a link aggregation between devices, and it doesn't even have to use LACP. You can statically configure it, but then you would be responsible for making any changes should this configuration change in the future. LACP does a lot of things for you automatically, and it's always useful to have LACP turned on. But not all devices support LACP, so you might have a device on one end that does support LACP and the other side doesn't. Well, you're going to have to set that one up statically without LACP in the mix, but you can still do link aggregation. You're just going to have to be the one to manage that as the network administrator. One of the other options on this answer was port mirroring. Port mirroring is super useful, especially if you're doing some type of network monitoring. You need to grab some packets from a device. You need to do some protocol analysis. That is perfect use. Maybe you put an IDS or an IPS into the mix so that you can watch those packets go by. You're effectively taking anything going from one device and you're mirroring it or sending a copy of all of that traffic to another device that happens to be on the network. Very useful, but not what we're trying to do from the ability to have LACP. LACP is only associated with this. We've got a lot that we can go through for these. Here we go, the link aggregation. 76% of you with the link aggregation got that one absolutely right. You knew that we use that for lag. That's what we would be doing, is to have all of the details on our switch set up to be able to have multiple ports and use them simultaneously. We mentioned how port mirroring is extremely useful, but not the answer to this question. That's not what we would be using either. We've got other options in here. Flow control is a way that switches and other protocols can send traffic and then get information back on whether they should be sending more traffic, so that you can monitor or at least maintain a certain level of throughput between devices and control how much information you're sending between those two devices. We have loop prevention. We talked earlier about using spanning tree on our switches. Spanning tree is what we would use for loop prevention. And then flood prevention, many switches have the capability to limit how much traffic can go through a particular interface on that switch at a particular time, and we can configure our switch to limit the amount of traffic that might be flooding the rest of our network. Another good thing to have configured for you network administrators out there. In this case, because we were specifically talking about the Link Aggregation Control Protocol, if you knew the acronym, then you probably knew the answer was A, link aggregation. 76% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. This is one of these scenarios when you start looking through this exam, there is a lot on this exam. There is so much information. And I think most people even often say, this Network Plus has so many new concepts. It probably has more acronyms. It's probably pretty close to the number of acronyms that are on Security Plus. But network, for its size, I would say per capita, the number of acronyms is probably the most dense of any of the 3 A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus exams. So what I've done is gone through all of my videos, and I've created a series of notes that takes all of the text from every video, all of the important charts, all of the important graphics, and it puts them into one single document. Incredibly useful to have this here. If you're someone who is try to get everything in one place, this is the set of course notes. This is the PDF version. I'm going to flip through a few pages so you can kind of see just how much information is chock full in this particular document. I put every bit of text. I put all of these important graphics. They're all in here. These are my course notes. There's also a physical version of the course notes available for both. There's a 007 version and a 008. They are identical to the digital version. But if you're somebody who likes to have a printed copy, this high quality, glossy pages, nice glossy cover, and a nice heavy, dense page. And it's got a nice paperback, high quality binding on it. So this is a great way to have everything in one place. If you buy the physical version, you get the digital version for free as well. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, you can always flip through that other version just so you have something available to download right now, today. You can do that. Go out to professormesser.com/NPCN or use the links at the top of my site for the 007 or the 008. Make sure you get the set of course notes that's appropriate for the exam that you happen to be taking. It's another great way to support the site. And if you bundle some of these things together, you can even get some cost benefit from this as well. That's at professormesser.com/NPCN. Let's do another question. I've got one here that asks, an organization is consolidating log files from Windows servers, Linux servers, switches, routers, and firewalls. Which of the following is used to consolidate this information? Is it NetFlow, environmental sensors, syslog, iPerf, or SNMP? An organization is consolidating log files from Windows servers, Linux servers, switches, routers, and firewalls. Which of the following is used to consolidate this information? Is it NetFlow, environmental sensors, syslog, iPerf, or SNMP? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. There's the link. It's right there on your page. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is a good question, and it applies. Let me think about this. This is another one that would be a 007 or a 008 question. So regardless of which one you're taking, I think this might help you. You can at least learn something from this particular question. This is a pretty practical question as well. What organization doesn't have Windows servers, Linux servers, switches, routers, firewalls? Every organization has these. So consolidating log files from those can be very, very useful. And it's something that's common across IT, I think. Everybody has a need to be able to go through these log files. So it's probably another one of those things inside of an organization that they probably don't spend enough time. I used to travel from place to place. I would see multiple organizations a day and talk to their IT teams, their security teams, and see what they were doing about consolidating log files. And I would see that there was not enough effort being made at really doing it well. And I would often say to third parties, if you could come up with a way to do this and do it well. In fact, if this was the only thing you did as an organization, you would go into somewhere and say, we can make this work for you. You'd be very successful because there's such a need to be able to have this. Speaking of needs to have this, I need the answer. So let's see what the answer is for this one. The question again asks, an organization is consolidating log files from Windows servers, Linux servers, switches, routers, and firewalls. Which of the following is used to consolidate this information? Is it NetFlow, environmental sensors, syslog, iPerf, or SNMP? And the results show 65% of you say it's syslog, just over half of you. 17% say SNMP. is what you want. You've got, you can't even see them on the screen. Let me get rid of this. We got 13% that said NetFlow, and then a tie for fourth at 3% apiece between environmental sensors and iPerf. Well, if you're someone who is consolidating log files, you need some way to take what is obviously some very diverse systems. Windows servers are very different than Linux servers. Linux servers are very different than switches. Switches are different than routers, and routers are different than firewalls. All of those are probably made by different manufacturers. They have different log formats. How can we transfer all of this back to one consolidated point in a way that every single one of these would be able to do it? Well, we happen to have a standard for this. That standard is syslog. Syslog is the standard for message logging, so that we have a standard way to send these logs across the network. Now, once the log gets to the other side, we will have to process the log and normalize it and put it in some type of database that we can put all of the other data that we happen to have. So you're going to need some type of receiver to be able to receive all of those logs. Usually that's your SIM. Usually that's the security information and event manager. Has a huge set of hard drives that are allocated to it, tons of storage, and you're bringing in terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of log files from all of these different devices into one central database. That central database is your SIM. And from there, you can create alarms, alerts, reports, and other things, depending on the capabilities of that SIM. This is incredibly powerful, especially if you need to go back in time and answer questions about things that have been occurring on the network. If you need some way to consolidate or correlate the data between Windows and Linux. Did something happen on the Linux server and then something happened on the Windows server? When did those happen? How can I look at the differences, the timestamps of when those things happen? Well, it's in your logs. And the way that you consolidate all those logs is through syslog. That is the right answer. Syslog is exactly what you would want to use. This is one that is incredibly useful, and 67% of you said, yep, that's what I would use as well. I would use syslog. We have other options here. We mentioned already that SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol, is something that every organization should also be using. But the Simple Network Management Protocol is not designed to consolidate and send log files across the network. It's really designed for statistics. It's designed for you going out, grabbing data, bringing that information back, and being able to look at it. So that is useful for statistical gathering and performance monitoring, but it really is not designed for sending tons of log files across the network. That is not the use of SNMP, so that would not be the right answer. We have NetFlow. 12% of you said NetFlow. NetFlow is, I guess you could think of it as a more advanced version of SNMP. Behind the scenes, NetFlow is really communicating via SNMP, but it provides additional statistics, especially the way application and higher level protocols happen to be performing on the network. NetFlow, I give some very good examples of NetFlow reports in the N10-008 course. You can look through those, but you'll notice there's no log files in there. So that's not what NetFlow is designed to do, and certainly would not be the best choice in this particular scenario. And then lastly, we have environmental sensors at 3%. And iPerf at 3%. The environmental sensors are sensors that you might have to be able to measure the amount of water in the air, the temperature of the room, and other environmental variables, and provide alarming and alerting if we happen to exceed any predefined values. That doesn't have anything to do with log files on all of those devices, so we wouldn't use environmental sensors at all. And iPerf, a great little utility to be able to do some type of performance measurement of a server. iPerf very commonly used to measure how well a web server might be performing. iPerf also a good option for doing performance monitoring, but not a good option for consolidating log files. In this case, the only option, the best option, the one that you should have chosen is option C, syslog. 66% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would recommend that you follow these instructions to be able to send me a note so that I can then send you back an email certifying that you were here to watch this, and that would certify you to earn a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. To do this, you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. On that, you would click the link that says Contact Us. That will bring up a form where you can put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put the something that at least is associated with January 2022 Network Plus. So I know this was from the study group. And then in the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, IPERF. IPERF is the super secret code word of the month. And then if you'd like to put anything else into that message, you're more than welcome. I read through every single one of these. I'm not always able to respond back because I get hundreds of these every month, but I do read through every single one of them, and I love to get your comments and read through what you put there. So again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, specify that this is the January 2022 Network Plus Study Group or something close to it. And then on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the word IPERF, which is your super secret code word of the month. And I will send you back, usually in about a week. I turn these around so that you can receive a digitally signed email from me certifying that you were here, that you must have watched this because you followed that process. You put in the super secret code word, and that's how we tell that you happen to be here. Let's do another question. I got time, so let's flip through one more question. Or I got more than one I can probably fit in. This one asks, a user connecting through a VPN to the corporate office is not able to use their printer at home. Which of the following could be used to resolve this issue? Would it be VDI, 802.1x, multi-factor authentication, clientless VPN, or split tunnel? A user connecting through a VPN to the corporate office is not able to use their printer at home. Which of the following could be used to resolve this issue? Would it be VDI, 802.1x, multi-factor authentication, clientless VPN, or split tunnel? If you think you know the answer, go to that link on your page, professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. This one, trying to remember if this was on 007 or not. It might have been. It could have been. It should have been. I'm not sure. It's definitely on 008 because that is the study group that we're on. But the 007, I'm not sure this one is out there as well. This is one that you might have run into. We'll have to see how you did with this one. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll be able to figure this one out on our own as we go through. See if you happen to know what this one happens to be. If you're on a VPN, you may have even found this. You may have run into this scenario. So this may be something that you've already had gone through the process of troubleshooting. You've done the analysis of the issue. You've resolved it. And you're off and running to the next thing. So which one of these things did you do to resolve it? Was it a VDI, an 802.1x, a multi-factor authentication, a clientless VPN, or a split tunnel? It's got to be one of those, right? That's the only, there's 5 options. We got to choose the right one. Let's see how we did with this one. The question again was, a user connecting through a VPN to the corporate office is not able to use their printer at home. Which of the following could be used to resolve this issue? Would it be VDI, 802.1x, multi-factor authentication, clientless VPN, or split tunnel? 58% of you, just over half, say split tunnel. But we have double digits, 19% say clientless VPN, 13% say VDI. 8% said 802.1x, and 2% said multi-factor authentication. Well, when we're talking about a VPN, how many VPNs operate is you have a remote user at a location, you have a VPN concentrator, and all of the traffic sent from this device is being sent across the VPN to the concentrator, at which point the concentrator decides where does this traffic need to go. So if it needs to go to the internal network, it then decrypts that traffic and sends it into the internal network. And anything that is sent, especially if you're sending it to a third place, would have to go through the VPN concentrator and then bounce back to that third-party site, such as professormesser.com. Well, that's sort of annoying. Why can't we just talk directly to Professor Messer? Or in the case of our scenario here, we're in a situation where we can't use a printer that's down here on our local network because all of the traffic is sent across that tunnel. That's why we call it a full tunnel, because everything is sent across that network. What we really need is a split tunnel where local traffic can stay local. Traffic may be going to other internet sites, can talk directly to those internet sites, and then anything going to corporate would be the only thing sent over that VPN concentrator. It's a more intelligent way of sending traffic over the VPN. It allows you to tell where the traffic is going to go at any particular time. And for people that need to use their local printer or communicate to other devices on their local network, it's the split tunnel configuration that's going to allow them to have that functionality. So if you're one of the 60% of folks that said split tunnel, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. That is exactly the question that you should be, or the answer that you should have considered to be able to configure this so that you can use your local printer. We have other options. We had 19% of you that said a clientless VPN. Well, this could have been already a clientless VPN that is not able to use our printer at home. So the type of VPN is not the issue. The configuration of the VPN that you are using is the issue, and the configuration setting that you need to define is the split tunnel, whether you're using a client-based VPN or a clientless VPN, and that's why clientless VPN is not the right answer. 12% of you said a VDI, which now moves your desktop into the cloud. It doesn't do anything for helping you print to your local printer. Everything is still going to corporate for this VPN. We would have to configure our VDI to have a split tunnel to be able to communicate back to the printer that we happen to have on our site. So this is incredibly useful if you need to move that desktop into the cloud, but doesn't help you a lot if you still need to print on your local printer. You'd have to make a configuration change, and that configuration would be a split tunnel. 802.1x is a standard for authentication, so that you need to authenticate to the network before you can communicate on it. 802.1x is the standard that provides that authentication method. Great for authentication, but doesn't help you for telling your traffic where it happens to go or enabling you to be able to use your printer. And multi-factor authentication, certainly very common to use. We often will use a username, password, and a pseudo-random number generator, or use a card that we happen to have with us with a chip inside. The multi-factor authentication, useful when authenticating, but not very useful when you're trying to print to your local printer. This is the one that would be the most used for the authentication, but doesn't help you at all for being able to use your printer. The best answer, the only one in this list that really provides a way to have the VPN communicate to corporate but still allow us to use the printer that's local on our network, would be indeed split tunnel. Answer E. 61% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question. I have one for you. This next question for you networking experts is asking, a network administrator has identified a number of errors associated with a WAN link. Which of the following would be the best way to test the router interface for potential problems? Would it be ping, punch down tool, tone generator, loopback plug, light meter? A network administrator has identified a number of errors associated with a WAN link. Which of the following would be the best way to test the router interface for potential problems? Would it be ping, punch down tool, tone generator, loopback plug, or light meter? If you think you know the answer, there's your link, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer, and you'll be able to put it in. Always remember what you locked in. My problem is I lock in my answer and then I forget. We don't show you your answer once you lock it in. So make a note of your answer, lock in your answer, and then we can keep track of it on the other side of this. If you're watching this in the replay, obviously we don't have that available. We have to be able to keep track of it ourselves, and hopefully you're following along as we go through here. This would be the one to really define it. It's definitely one of these five. This would apply to both. Obviously, all of these are 007 and 008 topics. So if you're studying for 007, this question would apply to you as well. This is one where we need to lock in what this happens to be. This one probably not as easy as some of the others. I noticed the numbers. Always watch how fast the numbers tend to accumulate. And if they go fast, I think, oh, I wrote an easy one. They knew what that one happened to be. But if it goes slower, then I think, okay, then this one might be a little more challenging. You can't really Google these. These questions are written brand new for each study group. So this is not one where a Google is going to help you very much anyway. These should be things you really are able to pull right off the top. These come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. You should be familiar with all of these topics and all of the answers that I put into these. I try to make sure that all of the answers are real things so that you are not only understanding what one thing does, but what the other things do as well. So you can do that calculatus, limitatus, and really figure out the good and the bad in this answer. Speaking of which, let's figure out what the good and bad happens to be. A network administrator has identified a number of errors associated with a WAN link. Which of the following would be the best way to test the router interface for potential problems? Would it be ping, punch down tool, tone generator, loopback plug, or light meter? We have 46% of you say ping is what you would use. We have 34% of you that say loopback plug is what you would use. 9% said tone generator, 7% said light meter, and 3% said punch down tool. Well, we can see here almost half of us, but still not quite a majority, said ping was the way to test a router interface for potential problems. Let's see what the answer happened to be. If you were trying to figure out if an interface was going bad and you were trying to get more details so that you could tell someone, I tested this interface, I can see the interface is operating, and I can tell you just how well the interface is operating because you ran it through a test that used a loopback plug. A loopback plug is perfect for testing physical interfaces because it takes a lot of data, sends it out an interface, and then the loopback plug loops around and sends it back into the device. And what happens on that device that we're sending the data out, we're also monitoring the data going in, and we're comparing the two. Is what we are receiving exactly the same data as what we have sent, or did something change along the way? And if something changed along the way, then it probably is going to be a problem with our interface. Time to swap out that interface card and put a new one in there. There are loopback plugs for Ethernet. There's loopback plugs for serial connections. There's loopback plugs that you would have for copper and for fiber. There's loopback plugs for almost everything. It's important to know and keep in mind, this is not a crossover cable. Crossover cables have a completely different use. They are wired completely differently. A loopback plug is designed to put everything going out of an interface, loop it back directly back into itself. You don't even use separate devices or separate machines that you might have. So this is absolutely a powerful function, especially when you're trying to determine where is the problem. Where are we running into issues? I need to confirm that this piece of machinery, that this interface on this router is working as expected. Because if the interface is bad, everything is going to be bad. We don't even need to call anyone else to solve this issue. Let's make sure this box is operating properly. And the best way to do that, one of the most common, and it's been around forever, is running a loopback. It's the same process, by the way, if you were to call your wide area network provider and you tell them, I'm having a problem on this link, I'm seeing CRC errors, I think there might be a problem on this cable, on this wire or the fiber going out to your facility. They will run a loopback test. They will put your CSU, DSU, or your local device into a loopback. They will send traffic down that link to your facility. They'll examine the traffic they're getting back from your facility, and they'll tell you, first, everything looks fine, whether it does or not. They're just going to tell you everything looks fine, or they'll tell you, yes, we're seeing errors. It must be on our side. So before you call them, maybe you should run your own loopback tests on your equipment and make sure it's not something that you can resolve without bringing in a third party. Loopback plugs would be perfect for this. Now, 46% of you chose ping. Ping, why wouldn't you use ping to determine the best way to test the router interface for potential problems? Well, ping doesn't test anything. Ping will send a request to a device and ask that device to send a response back. It doesn't say, send me a well-crafted response. It doesn't say, examine this request and see if anything went wrong. It doesn't have a way to tell if any of that data has been changed along the way. The information is simply, you send a ping and you get a response back. It doesn't even tell you if that particular interface is good or bad. In fact, when we send the ping, everything may be working fine. Maybe the problem we're having on that interface is intermittent. Ping isn't going to show you any of that. It's not a very good diagnostics tool if you're trying to find potential problems with a physical interface. It's a very useful tool to be able to tell, have I configured routing properly? Do I have a connection to that device? Am I at least able to get data flowing to that device and to receive data back from that device? Now, what quality of data is being received and sent? That's a completely different issue. And if we wanted to narrow down whether there was a problem with that interface, your best option would be to use a loopback plug, option D, the one that 35% of you said. Ping is just a connectivity test. Are you plugged in or are you not? That doesn't tell you much more than that. That's not very useful for doing detailed diagnostics of a potential interface. We've got 9% that said tone generator. Tone generators are what you would use in conjunction with a probe, an inductive probe, so that you could put a tone generator on one end of a wire, go into the data center on the other side of your building, and figure out where the other end of that wire happens to be. That's all you would use it for. It doesn't tell you anything about router interfaces. It doesn't tell you if there are potential problems on that router interface. It doesn't tell you anything. So loopback plug would definitely be much better than running something through a tone generator, which only gives you the basics. We have 7% that said light meter, and if you're running a fiber connection, you want to test the fiber to see if that fiber is working properly. A light meter is a perfect choice to be able to see, are you able to get a high quality amount of light from one end of that fiber to the other? But in this question, we had nothing to do with fiber. We wanted to test a router interface, not a piece of fiber. So a light meter isn't going to help us for testing a particular router interface and if that router interface is working the way you would expect. We also have, lastly, a punch down tool. And if you need to connect wires into a punch down block, you will need a punch down tool. It doesn't tell you anything, though, about the quality or the availability of a particular router interface and if there are potential problems with that interface. The best way to test a router interface for potential problems, given these 5 options, by far, is a loopback plug. 35% of you answered D, loopback plug. That is the right answer. That's the one you should use, and that's the one that is the best choice if you are trying to find a problem with a physical interface, a physical Ethernet connection, a physical WAN connection, any physical interface on a device. Maybe it's a serial interface. You want to use a loopback plug. I always found the problem is when it came time for me to run a loopback test, I couldn't find the loopback cables. Usually they're included or you've created some prior to having this device. And I got to a point where I would put them in a bag, in a small Ziploc bag, and I would physically attach them with a wire cable or some other attachment, physically attach it to that device so that if I ever needed a loopback, and I was at this remote site, had none of my tools available, on the back of the machine, I could just pull it out of that connection, plug it into a interface, and then run the loopback. So you may even want to consider doing something like that if you have an interface that you're going to need to test and you need to be sure whoever's there has the tools available. Because sometimes you just need somebody to plug it in. I'll run the command to run the loopback, but you need to plug it in first. And if you don't have the loopback cable or the loopback plug, how are you going to do that? Make sure you're familiar with that for your exam. In fact, there's a lot you need to be familiar with on your exam. There are a ton of exam objectives. Fortunately, the entire list of objectives is available for you to download right now for free. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and follow the link that will take you over to the CompTIA website where you can download everything you need to know for your Network Plus exam. It has a full list of all of the topics. And if you know everything listed in these exam objectives, you're going to take this exam, you're going to do great. You're not going to have any problem with this exam if you know everything listed in those exam objectives. There is also a way to find them. Go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you right to the page. Make sure you download those. They should really be the first thing you look at before you start your studies. It should absolutely be the last thing you reference because it makes a great checklist before you go into your exam. Make sure you have those and that you use those. Don't just download them and read through them. This should be what you are using through your entire studies. Cross things out as you go along and make sure you're familiar with everything that's in there. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. We have another one scheduled for February 16th. So come back on the 16th. We've got other things happening before then. If you want to come back next week at this time, we do a Security Plus study group. So we still have another study group for January. But in February, we've got A Plus on the 8th and the 10th, Network Plus on the 16th, and Security Plus on the 23rd. These times and dates can change. Make sure you keep checking in on our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. If I ever change a date, if I ever change a time, I always change it on this calendar first. So if you check that link, you will be the first one to know, and you'll know that I have updated that and it is the latest information because it's at professormesser.com/calendar. Make sure you keep your eye on that. Well, the first hour is over. That went quick. The first hour of Q&A is done, but we've got more Q&A coming. I'm going to turn this boat around and have you ask me questions in the after show. Stick around for that. That's coming up next. We've also got our Network Plus Success Bundle. I'll remind you, it's out at professormesser.com/netsuccess. There's plenty of tools and free videos and course notes and other things that you can use to help pass your Network Plus exam. Find out more at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We, of course, have our discounted vouchers on our website that come with a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook, an ebook that you can't buy. You can only get it with my Success Bundle or with my vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And, of course, don't forget, if you like this video, maybe you've learned a few things here today, we'd love it if you click the thumbs up button. That like button helps a lot when we start working with our friends over at YouTube. They see that you like the content we create, and that does help us quite a bit. Don't forget about our weekly pop quiz questions for Network Plus. You can find them on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter, and find them on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. Thanks for being here in this first hour. Chat room, you're awesome. Stick around for the after show coming up next, and we'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. That was a lot of Q&A. It feels like that just went by in an instant. For those of you asking about the objectives, are the N10-008 objectives on my site? I don't host any of the objectives. So if you go to professormesser.com/objectives, there's a link there that says click here to go to the CompTIA website and download the exam objectives or something like that. So click that link and that takes you to the CompTIA website. I don't, because they change the objectives. They don't do a lot of changes, but they do a lot of bug fixes. They fix a lot of spelling problems, or they remove a lot of outdated acronyms or acronyms that may not be put on there correctly. It's a big document, so they'll update it from time to time. So there's different versions. So I don't host it. You have to go to the CompTIA website and download it because I don't want to have to keep track of that. They keep everything there. They update everything on their site. So why not just go straight to the source? And that way you know you're getting the latest version of those objectives. Pretty useful to have there. On this, before we get started, let me tell you what happens now. This is the after show. So this is really not a formal part of the study group, but it's sort of turned into one. It's turned into a formal Q&A of things that we can discuss. So I like to bring up on the screen. There we go. That is not the right button. There we go. Now you can see the link if you would like to ask questions. I'm taking questions from the YouTube video description. It's on my screens right here to my right is where all of those are going by. So if you're on my website at professormesser.com/live or you are on YouTube, that is the chat that I am watching. So if you have questions, put it into that chat and I can, of course, refer and reference anything you happen to be putting in there, whatever questions you might have. Could be anything. Maybe we need to circle back about what I should be doing on Twitch. Not going to happen, just so you're familiar. Here's a question that came from Connor. First thing in the chat room, work in a small law office, 5 employees. I am so sorry that there's lawyers in there, so I apologize already. Would Norton or McAfee antivirus be more than we need? Or is Windows Defender and Defender for Cloud enough if I take full advantage of the services? Thanks. I can give you my perspective as a former systems engineer for Network Associates. That at the time was the company created with McAfee and Network Associates merged together. And I became certified in the McAfee antivirus, the McAfee antivirus management tools, firewalls, IPS. Of course, I had come from the network general side, so knew all of the details about the reporting and protocol analysis tools on that side, network management. So I have extensive knowledge on, well, first detailed knowledge on McAfee, but generally how the antivirus industry works in general. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages for all products, but I often tell people, especially friends and family, they will send me notes saying, should I buy antivirus for my computer? Should I get the McAfee? Should I get the Norton? Should I get these things that they keep pushing in front of me? For the most part, in most environments, Windows Defender is the only thing you need. Windows Defender is an exceptional antivirus application. It scores extremely well on independent studies. And there are many sites that do independent studies of antivirus, and it performs exceptionally. And I tell everybody, and including on my systems, I just run Defender. It's built into Windows. Microsoft manages making sure it's kept up to date. And it has some nice capabilities every month where they check for a more detailed malware that may be on your system. It's an exceptional and very fine antivirus that you might be able to use. And if you're in a small environment or you have systems at home, that's all you need. You don't need to pay any money or do anything extra there. Effectively, everyone in the industry has kind of access to all of the virus signatures that are out there, or they have the ability to have access to the viruses so that they can create their own signatures anyway. Now, when you get into larger environments, you have different challenges. For example, what if you had 500 systems? How do you manage antivirus on all of those systems? How do you keep them up to date? How do you do an analysis to determine, is that system up to date? Did everybody download the latest signatures? Is everybody running the latest? You need some type of centralized management console to be able to do that. And so I would say if you're in that environment, well, yeah, you might want to look at some additional management tools that would allow you to have access to those. I don't think, we're going to do this real quick. I don't think if you're somebody who is working on a network that large, you probably already have some type of system, some type of management console that would allow you the ability to really manage all those systems and be able to work through them. There's also functionality that Microsoft has for Defender that way. So some of the cloud-based management you mentioned may be all you need for Defender and Defender in the cloud. Plenty to work through there. If you're someone who is managing antivirus on a small group of systems, just run Defender and you're fine. Not a problem. I wonder if I could find that website. This would be, I used to have all of these linked together back when I was a systems engineer for McAfee. Do you know the hatred that people would bestow upon me, especially when I didn't work for McAfee to start with? I worked for Network General. I did protocol analysis. I did network management. I was a packets guy, and then we got bought by McAfee. So I effectively, by default, became an employee of McAfee, and we changed our name to Network Associates. Boy, I was not ready for the hate I was going to receive as a McAfee systems engineer. I think I stayed in that job another 6 months. Just could not deal with that change. It did not work out very well. Maybe longer. Maybe I stayed a year after the merger because I went to at least one kickoff, maybe two. But the antivirus world is a challenging one. And so one of the things that I did was became familiar with antivirus. We had a firewall that we were a proxy-based firewall, but it was called Gauntlet. So I became a firewall expert in those because I became certified on all of these. We bought an IPS. So McAfee had their own IPS. McAfee was becoming this security company, everything soup to nuts, and then it just didn't work out. There were a number of challenges there. There's a whole Harvard Business Review case study you could do of that entire merger. And as you're probably aware, Network Associates doesn't exist anymore. Effectively, Network General divested themselves away after what ended up being not a great merger. So effectively, there was a divorce again. They merged, and then they decided, boy, that was a bad idea. Broke themselves out and became Network General again, and I went over there on that side. And then McAfee, or Network Associates, turned back into McAfee. So all that branding, changed all those road signs, changed the signs everywhere on the buildings, and then just all changed back to McAfee. They could have just kept the same signs, and maybe they did. Maybe they saved money on the signs by doing it that way. I don't know. The other question in the chat room, Bob asks, is there a code word you have for a discount on Network Plus? Nope. You just go to professormesser.com/vouchers. You can buy a voucher that's got the discount built in. There's no super secret code word. There's no voucher code. There's no coupon code. There's no special code. There's nothing you need to be able to get the discount. You just have it. So I don't know why more people don't do that. They make you jump through all these hoops to be able to get a discount. I don't have time for that. I need you to get certified. So here's a voucher. It's already discounted. Go. And what could be easier? So simple to have that there. So that's what I would recommend if you're looking for a voucher. Question from the Blasphemous Martyr in the chat room, which sounds deep, brother. But the question is not so bad. The question asks, been an InfoSys technician for 1.5 years now. No certs in IT for a large global corporation. This sounds like a pretty good gig already. This continues. I will be promoted to the SOC we're opening. Great. But feel very underqualified. For those not familiar with the SOC, the SOC is the Security Operations Center. There's not a lot of entry-level positions available in IT security. IT security is a role you tend to work up into. You get a strong knowledge of operating systems and of networks and a lot of other things. And then finally, you're qualified to work entry-level in security. But the few entry-level security jobs out there, one of them happens to be in a SOC. It's a great opportunity to get in on the ground floor of security without maybe having to go through a lot of those other experiences of learning operating systems, learning networks. Eventually, you're going to have to learn those as well. But what's great about having that capability is now you're in. Now you're in security. And you tell other people you're in security, and immediately you're not in security. You're in security, in IT security. The beauty of this is that you now have something on your resume that's specific to IT security. And if you want to move to another organization or somewhere else within your organization, you can do more security from there. So pretty useful. The question, though, says, how out of my depth will I be? Well, entry level in a SOC is sort of the help desk of security. It's the entry level. Nobody is expecting you to be an expert at configuring firewalls, managing IPS alerts, being able to configure multi-factor authentication, setting up IPsec tunnels, setting up the SIM with the sys. Nobody's expecting you to do that level of implementations with security right out of the gate. They know that if you're entry level in a SOC, you're effectively first level. You're taking phone calls. You're understanding what people are asking when it deals with this particular security issue, and you know who should be handling that issue. So that's what I always will tell people is get that job in the SOC. That's a good job to get if you're interested in security, because now you have somewhere to go from there. So that's why in this case, I think you're fine. You've been a information systems tech for 1.5 years now. Great. You already sort of, you know the drill. You understand the job. You know the technologies. You've now heard about the different services. You know the applications that are running. But now you've got an opportunity to take that bit of knowledge you have and leverage it into an entry-level security position. I think it's a great opportunity. Why wouldn't you do that? Because if that doesn't work, and you think, I got into this security role, it's in a SOC, I have learned a lot, but it's just not for me. Now, if you need to roll that back to, not even roll back, you want to convert that over to Windows Server management, Linux management, cloud-based management, networking. You've now got some very high-level knowledge that you can use to help get you one of those other roles. So this is a win-win. You can't go wrong here with this. So that's why I say if you've got an opportunity to get in a SOC, which there's not a lot of those jobs out there anyway, why wouldn't you do that? Just for example, go out to your favorite job hosting site, go out to the Monsters and the LinkedIn jobs and the Indeeds and the Dices of the world, and go look to see how many SOC positions are available in your area. I bet there's not a lot. So that's why I tell people, if you're trying to get into security and you would like to kind of jumpstart this a little bit, see if there's some SOC roles in your area. That could be a great way to do it. Other questions in the chat room. What is the command to activate the loopback plus? I don't know the question. I don't think I understand the question. Loopback and the ability to do a loopback is something that's different on every system you'll run into. You have to have the plug first to plug into the interface, but on that system you're plugging into, you have to tell it, please run a loopback test for me, please, for the next 5 minutes, go. And then you can watch the stats. Okay, we've sent a packet, we've received a packet. We've sent 2 packets, we've received 2 packets. We've sent 3 packets. This 3rd packet came back garbled. So those are the type of things we're looking for. You usually configure that on the system, and it's different depending on the piece of hardware that you're using. Once you're done, you remove the loopback plug in the original connection, you're back up and running. So there is downtime when you perform a loopback test. You're effectively disconnecting the network, plugging in the loopback, and instead of sending normal traffic, you're now sending specialized diagnostic traffic. So it will bring down whatever system you have there, but how else are you going to test the interface unless you really send data through it? It's the only way you can do it. Those really annoying intermittent problems, you're just going to have to deal with the downtime. That's one of those advantages, disadvantages of using a loopback plug. Other questions from the chat room. Let's see if I can find. Do you have any tips to help motivate yourself to study for certificates? Absolutely. I am very motivated by money. I am. I am. Whenever I'm trying to get another job, whenever I'm looking to do something, money motivates me. Well, I guess it's sort of a comparison. Money and then the other benefits, the ability to have a home life, the ability, maybe you have a different set. Maybe flexibility is the most important thing for you. Maybe having a job that is local is important for you. Maybe having a job where you travel is important to you. Everybody's a little bit different. I'm coin operated, as they say. I am very motivated on how much more money I can make, which is great in IT. If you want to make more money, you can look at the jobs that are just a little bit higher level than what you're currently doing, and you can see what they're asking for. So if you're working at a help desk, you think, I would love to get into networking, especially switch administration, router administration, configuring those systems, designing them. How can I do that? What type of things would get me to that level? Well, go look at some of those jobs. What is a network administrator? What do they have to know to get a network administrator job? A network designer. What do they have to know to get a job as a network designer, network architect? Their job postings are out there. So go look at those job postings to see what do they want? Oh, they want me to have this certification. They want me to have that knowledge. They want me to understand these technologies. Let me go learn that. So that's going to give you the information you need to help motivate yourself. So if you're in a help desk position and you think, all right, I've been in this help desk position for 6 months or 9 months, I'm ready to move up. What should we do? What interests me? Do I like Windows Server? Do I like workstation management? Do I like Linux servers? Do I like cloud-based systems? Do I like networking? Do I like security? What do I like? Now I want to move into those roles. What do I need to know? And it may be something you already know to be able to have that there, but it may not be. So you need to have a look to see what options you would need to be able to move into some of those roles. So be sure you have a look through that. That will help you if you're trying to motivate yourself to find out what do you want to do next. Turns out the only way to get there, to make more money, to have the flexibility, to travel, to not travel, is to have these particular certifications. I can't think of a better way to motivate oneself than find out, what do you want your life to be? Now, how do I get there? It's very broad, I understand, as an answer. I don't mean it to sound flippant, but that is the way that you set the goals. You have to be able to have that goal so that you can then put the building blocks, the stepstones that will get you between where you are and where that happens to be. And maybe you set yourself in a couple different goals. Maybe you have 3 different goals. In the short term, I want to do Linux administration. Longer term, I want to get into networking. Super long term, I want to get into security. So let's figure out what stones I need to put in the path to be able to make my way up to that level. Now, everybody's a little bit different. Every organization works different. Everybody has a different path. Sometimes you might be able to skip over a stone. Sometimes you might have to do more stones in the middle. It just depends on what opportunities happen to be in your area, the people you happen to meet, the phone calls you happen to get, the circumstances that you happen to run into. There's been jobs in my career where I've had to look through the available job listings. I've had to see what's available in my area. I've had to send out resumes to see if I can get any response. There have been other times where I've been walking into a building, see somebody I happen to know, and they say, you know, we're looking for somebody who has these skills. Would you be interested in that job? Like, yes. Where do I sign up? And then I end up moving to a different job. The last big job I had was working as a systems engineer. This is the last big job I've had. The last job working for a third party that I had was I was working in one organization. I got a phone call out of the blue from somebody that I had worked with many, many years before and hadn't talked to him in a very long time. And he says, hey, I just interviewed at this company. They're a startup. Nobody's ever heard of them. They got something nobody else has. And for the person I'm talking to say that, I already had respect for his technical knowledge. If he's saying this is something new and exciting, I'm listening. So he says, you should talk to these folks. I'm going to go work for them as a salesperson. I would love you to come and be a systems engineer, and we could do this together. And so I interviewed with them and ended up, maybe it was a mistake. They gave me the job. I took it. I didn't ask any questions. But that was a time when it was completely a bluebird, completely out of thin air, getting a phone call and somebody saying, I found your next job. I found this next job and it has your name on it. I thought of you first thing. You need to talk to these people. That's why I often tell people, make sure you collect this group of people in your LinkedIn that you've worked with. Keep track of what they're doing. Be accessible to them. Having these professional relationships can not only be valuable just so you can talk shop with other people, but occasionally these opportunities will show up. Now, that particular job with a startup that nobody ever heard of, I was the 95th employee in the company, just a tiny little building that was set up in Silicon Valley, and that eventually, years later, grew into thousands and thousands of employees, and it was Palo Alto Networks. A technology that nobody had seen, that nobody believed, a technology that nobody thought it even was possible, this company was doing. And I got in at the very beginning of that as a systems engineer, where I got to learn a new technology that nobody had ever seen before. How do you prepare yourself for that? How do you prepare yourself to take a job for something that up until the time you talk to them did not exist? The way that you prepare is you build the foundation. You build the foundation of knowledge of operating systems, knowledge of networking, knowledge of security. And at that time, I had experience with Unix and Linux. I had Microsoft certifications. I had networking certifications, and I had written a book on Nmap. So I sort of had filled all of the different boxes. Even then, it was a very competitive position to get because there were other people that were in for this role that were already systems engineers for security companies. I was a systems engineer at a network management company. So I kind of had to, I had to have other people speak on my behalf. I had to speak very strongly on my own behalf. I had to tell them why I was the right answer for this, and they ended up doing it. But if you don't position yourself and get yourself ready, when the opportunity happens, you won't be in the running. So I always tell people, you may be doing these certifications for a goal that you don't even know yet. It's just out there in the ether. The universe will present it to you eventually. But unless you earn the knowledge now, you're not going to be ready when that thing finally drops. So if you were looking at sort of a more broader reason, a more broader perspective of how to motivate yourself, there is, of course, the direct path, and then the one where you kind of have to prepare yourself for anything. Because as it turns out, those things actually happen. These weird, from the middle of nowhere, out of the sky, boom, drops an opportunity. Now what do? You got to be ready for it. And the only way to be ready is having all of those things in your pocket and ready to go. When somebody says, why are you good? Well, let me pull all this stuff out of my pocket. Look at this stuff. What do you think? Wouldn't this be good? I really think for that job, and this is another good takeaway, I don't think I was probably the best choice at that time for that particular job, given the other people that were applying. I think there were other people applying for that job that were better qualified for that particular job at that particular time. There were still a lot of things I needed to come up to speed for those particular technologies. But because the person I would be paired with was somebody that I already worked with for years in the past, and we already understood each other, and he already understood, oh, well, just put him in the role. He'll learn what he doesn't happen to know right now, but he's got all the basic skills to get up and running immediately. You know, he can talk to people. He can do the demonstrations. He can get that technology in a language across to the customer. Well, they will want to learn it. And for the first year, when you're with a startup that has a technology that nobody has seen, a lot of what you're doing is teaching people, here's what this does. And of course, having them tell you, no, it doesn't. Nothing does that. Like, watch this. Hold my beer. Watch this. And that was a lot of fun. Well, if you're ever in a position where you can get with a startup and do that with a technology that's brand new, that nobody has seen, it's like a magic trick. Every time you walk into a customer where you say, this technology does this. It knows every application running on your system. You can block applications just by saying block Facebook. You can block functions of applications. You can tell people they can read Twitter but not post to Twitter. You know, those technologies in a firewall, people at the time said that doesn't exist. Firewalls work with port numbers. It just blocks port 80. It just blocks port 22. It doesn't block an application. And then you get to show them. Let's plug it in. Let's see what's running on your network. I got to tell you, there's nothing more exciting than plugging into someone else's network that you've never been on and having one of these types of tools, which has amazing visibility, suddenly show them things they had no idea was on their network. Identify threats that are running across their network. Identify viruses that are on their network. Identify applications they didn't know was running on their network. Identify peer-to-peer apps they didn't know was running on their network. I would say in that job, and I worked there about 7 years, in that job, I probably was the number one. I probably had more people fired in that job than any other job I ever held. I'll put it that way. Because when you start to seeing everything running on a network and picking out all of these things that people used to be able to do invisibly, and suddenly it's brought right to the front. There were meetings where they stopped it right in the middle of the meeting because we were seeing on the network was so egregious and so inappropriate on a corporate network. They stopped us in the meeting, said, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. Walk out of the meeting, began the process to fire the person, then would come back in. And by the time the meeting was over, that person had already been walked out the door. And I would tell you, for the things we saw on the network, rightfully so. There was very few times when you could point, probably never, that I could point to that and say that wasn't justified. Like you can't do that on someone's network. There were also cases, and for those of you working towards Security Plus, there were also scenarios where we would see things on the network that were blatantly illegal, in some cases felonious. So When you get to that level where prison time is now based on the things that you're seeing on the network, and you're bringing in people at the highest levels of law enforcement, these are the situations that an IT security professional will often find themselves in, and you have to be ready for that. And that was remarkable when those things would happen, and unfortunate, but probably for the best in the big scheme of things. What software do I use to monitor apps running on a network? Well, in that particular case, that scenario that I'm describing where we're able to have that level of visibility, it was the Palo Alto Networks firewall. It wasn't even a monitoring app. The firewall was showing you all of those things. That's really what the remarkable part of this was, is the ability to see millions of viruses, identify thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities, or people trying to attack and take advantage of thousands of vulnerabilities, being able to see all of the different hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications that are on someone's network. Really remarkable. And now it's just normal. Now that's what we expect from our firewalls. At the time, it was brand new. It was something that nobody expected a firewall to be able to do. And of course, it now allows us to do so much more on the network. So it was sort of a long answer to that. But that is where you really have to approach what you are doing with your career with some type of direction. You have to decide what it's doing. Don't ever be in a position with your job that you don't know what's next, that you feel yourself floating around in the industry, not knowing, what am I doing in this job? Where am I going from here? You should never be in that position, especially with IT, because there's so many options available. If you are in a job and you're thinking, this is okay, I really wish I was doing something with networking, there are hundreds of networking jobs out there. All you have to do is figure out what they want you to have, and then you go get it. And then you go get the networking job. That's how it works in IT. This is very different than almost any other industry that you will ever run into. If you're in medicine, you work towards being a doctor, a nurse, a physician's assistant, whatever it happens to be, and that's your job. To be able to move into a different role within that organization, you have to go back to college and find additional things. You have to work hard. You go to school at night to be able to get that. In IT, you don't even have to do that. In IT, you could make more money than a doctor and not have to go to medical school. So that's why I always tell people, figure out where you'd like to go and then just go learn those things. We have such a large amount of learning opportunities available on the internet, people that are willing to help, tons of different things you can do. That's where I would certainly focus your efforts. And if you're interested in doing that, absolutely go there and do those things. For those of you asking in the chat room, so we've been sort of talking about jobs that I've had in the past, and they were asking if this is my job or do I still have another job that I do? This is what I do full time. Not talk to you on live streams, but when we create content, we make the videos, we create study materials for these certifications. That's all we do. So I work for myself now doing that. I don't have to work for a third party for those pieces, which is also has its own challenges, but certainly a lot of fun. Let's just do those. Let's see how we are breaking out some of these pieces. There's quite a bit to go through with the questions. We are taking questions in the chat room. There's the link at the bottom that takes you to the chat on my site, or if you're on YouTube already, it's the YouTube chat that we are able to reference here. Nick in the chat room, passed your Network Plus last month. Congratulations. Working on Security Plus now. I think that's a good path. Again, creating all of those things you need to be able to hang on to those opportunities when they show up. And I think Security Plus is a good one. Question in the chat room from Austin. Would I recommend having a cheat sheet and jotting it down as soon as you walk into the testing room? I think that's a good strategy, especially in things like Network Plus and A Plus, even Security Plus to some extent, where there are some things you have to have some rote memorization on, or you would like to write it down just so you can easily reference it. I use especially on the on the piece of paper they give you in a testing center. If I'm working on an exam that has a lot of subnetting, I use my 7-second subnetting table. So I quickly jot down the table, and then I get into the exam. So it's very useful to sort of put that out there. If you're working on the online version of the exam, you're taking this exam at home, there is a whiteboard that they give you online. And if you go out to On View Whiteboard is what you should search for. On View is ONVUE, one word. I think I'll show it to you that are here right now. The On View Whiteboard is what you get when you're doing this online. You can't have a piece of paper on your desk. You can't bring anything into the testing center. You have to take their piece of paper and their writing utensil. Online, you can't have a writing utensil. You can't have a piece of paper. You have to do everything online. And they have a practice whiteboard online, so you can go through and practice it now. And then once you're familiar with it, when you sit for the exam, you'll be able to work with it. It's out on the Pearson VUE website. Just Google On View Whiteboard. It'll take you right to that page. You can try it out yourself. But if it's a testing center, then they give you the piece of paper. What kind of resources are you allowed to bring into the testing room? None. You can bring nothing into the testing room. You bring yourself. You bring, that's it. You leave your phone, your wallet, anything, your watch. It's all left outside. It's all left. Usually there is a locker. They lock everything up. They give you the key. That is one where you don't have a choice. You have to leave everything outside the room. You're just bringing in your brain. So that's why that whiteboard can be useful. You can kind of jot things down from your brain, put them on there before or just as the exam starts, so you can reference that later. Matthew asks, is the Network Plus still considered less than compared to the CCNA? Well, if you ask people on the Cisco side, they dismiss all other certifications. They think that everyone is less than them. The reality, though, of course, is that the Network Plus and the CCNA are two completely different exams that are approaching the need for certification from a completely different perspective and are not used for the same thing. They don't replace one or the other. You don't get to decide, I need A+, I need Network Plus or I need CCNA, which one do I take? You're never in that position. Network Plus is an entry-level certification. CCNA is decidedly not an entry-level certification. Network Plus is a good precursor to the CCNA, but if you're deciding that you really want a CCNA, some people decide, well, I'm not going to go get the Network Plus. I'm just going to start with the CCNA. But then what you have to do is effectively learn all of the things you had to learn from the Network Plus so that you can then get up to speed with the things you need to know for the CCNA. So you effectively now have to learn all the Network Plus stuff. So if you jump straight to the CCNA, it's probably going to take you longer than if you simply already have the Network Plus in hand and then can jump into the CCNA. They are not comparable to each other. People will tell you they are. People always say, well, why are you doing the Network Plus? Why don't you just start with the CCNA? Well, why don't you just start being a CAO? Why don't you start with your CCIE? Why are you wasting time with the CCNA? Well, you start at a certain level because you need to build a foundation that you can then work on. So I think it's probably people who don't know anything about the Network Plus or don't have a Network Plus have a misunderstanding of where that particular certification fits in the big picture. They also have a misunderstanding of what's probably expected on today's CCNA as well. That's one where I think it'd be best if you put both of those back to back with each other. Look at the exam objectives for Network Plus. Look at the exam objectives for CCNA. Interestingly enough, you will find topics on Network Plus that aren't covered on CCNA. You will certainly find topics on the CCNA that aren't covered on Network Plus. They are not interchangeable. So if anybody is in a position where they're telling you, oh, just skip that and go straight to here, they're both the same thing, they do not know what they are talking about. I was trying to say that nicer. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't. There's just too much. There's too much intricacies with what you need to know on the CCNA side. I will tell people, though, if you're really focused, you want to be a network administrator, you want to work with switches, you want to work with routers, you're short of time, you really just want to jump right into it, maybe it makes sense for you to skip your Network Plus. But just keep in mind that you're still going to have to spend time learning that Network Plus content. You're just now learning it along with your CCNA topics. So that's why I do that. I like that I'm getting the trolls in the chat room saying, so CCNA or Security Plus, which one? Why would you take the Security Plus? Just take the CCNA. That's what you hear people say, which makes no sense. Those are really two very different certifications. So that's not even a comparison. And it's amusing and nice of you to put that in there, and I appreciate the humor. I'm sure that's what that was for, and I appreciate it. So what's the best way to study and not forget all the commands? Well, you're asking the wrong person, because I forget all the commands all the time. For the purposes of the Network Plus, understanding a command and what it does is perhaps more useful than knowing exactly how to type and use that command. Even more useful would be able to actually use it. I think that's probably where the ultimate is. I think start slow. Start by taking all the different commands on this exam, and there's a lot. There are a lot of commands on the Network Plus exam. So take the Network Plus commands and go through each one and go, okay, ping does this. Netstat does this. Net does this. Traceroute does this. You know, get an understanding of what those are and when you would use them. That is your first step. And then secondly, now it's time to run some. So if you'll notice as I go through the videos I have on ping and traceroute and netstat, I'm running it on my own machine, but you could use exactly the same commands on your machine. So run your own pings, run your own traceroute. Not just run them, but really understand what it's telling you in the output. And once you do it yourself, there's something about you manually running those commands yourself, not watching me do it, but you doing it on your own keyboard and looking at the results on your own network that is more powerful than just watching someone else do it. There's something about the way our brains work and the synapses that fire, and it kind of links together things for you. It's almost like a muscle memory. Oh yeah, I ran the ping. I remember running the ping, and I pinged out from my network, and here's what I saw. And it gives you a better understanding of how these utilities operate. So I always tell people, get as much hands-on as possible and do it in whatever way you're comfortable with. Do it on your own machine, do it on a test machine, load up Linux in a virtual machine so that you know you're not breaking anything. Maybe run some tests in that Linux virtual machine with the VM set up as a NAT. Now set up the VM in bridged mode. Is it different? How is it different? What do I see that's different? If I run a trace route in one and run a trace route in the other, is there a difference? That's a great way to really see what the differences are between those. Once you use these and do them in hands-on, you're doing them yourself, they're easy. They come to you much easier. Now, in your normal day of doing things, you're going to be put on the help desk. You're going to be in the network operations center. You're going to be in the security operations center. You're going to use these utilities all the time. You're going to be bored at how quickly you will type ping when you sit down at a machine. Like, okay, I know exactly what to do. Let's do a ping. Okay, well, that's interesting. What does my routing table look like? Let's look at the routing table. Well, that's interesting that the route's going this direction. Why is the route not going that direction? It's being assigned. My default router is being assigned from DHCP. Let's look at what the DHCP server is showing me in the scopes. You know, those are the types of things that are just going to be normal for you. It just takes repetition to get there. And it seems like when you're first learning them, like this, you're never going to be able to figure all this out. But in reality, once you get the first couple under your belt and you're like, okay, I got ping down, I got trace route down, let's do another one. You know, you've already got it. You've learned it. It's not like you forget it. You got it. And you're going to be using it a lot. So let's start adding on to those. I find new little networking utilities, new little networking functions, new little command line options all the time that I didn't know was there. And you read somebody's blog post or you see it in a YouTube video. You're like, whoa, what did they just do there? Oh, I need to do that. Oh, look at this. I didn't even know that option was there. Happens all the time because all of these utilities have just hundreds of options available. It's really interesting what options you might run into. Obviously, for the exam, you just sort of need to know the most popular tags, the most popular options for these, but not all of them require an extensive knowledge of every option in ping, every option in traceroute. You don't need to know that. Just go sit down and run a few. Get comfortable with the utility. Understand what it's telling you. I think a lot of the questions you get on your exam will not be asking you how to run them or what this very complex set of command and options is really doing. That's for the Microsoft exam. For the Network Plus exam, most of these questions will give you a scenario and say what utility would be the best to use to solve this problem. Ping, traceroute, netstat, blah, 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 blah. Well, you don't even have to know the different options for the command. You just have to know what the commands do. So make sure you're familiar with that. I think that's the best way to do it. And then, of course, the hands-on takes you to the next step, gets you farther along as you're working through them. Other questions, we've got plenty more. We've got some more time, a few minutes left in this one. So feel free to have a look at different options on ProfessorMesser.live. Feel free to ask a question there. See what option would be available. We got a couple that come in from Gamble SG asks, for someone looking to get into cybersecurity, whatever that is, what certification should I get first? You know, we sort of have fallen into this term of cybersecurity, which technically doesn't mean anything, but we sort of use it in our industry to sort of define everything relating to security. In our particular world, in this context of this live stream and these certifications, I always refer to it as IT security, because I think cybersecurity probably is not the best description of this. But let's say you're wanting to get into IT security. I think entry level into IT security kind of requires the things I've already mentioned. Get a knowledge of one or two operating systems, become knowledgeable in Windows, become knowledgeable in Linux, get some networking knowledge, and that's probably one of the most important foundations you need when you're getting into IT security, because a lot of the things you will be doing day to day are very network oriented. Configuring an IPsec tunnel, setting up network address translation, building and setting up firewall rules, setting up an authentication factor that will allow you access into this particular resource. There are so many different networking hooks there and things that you need to know about how the network operates that I would say in day-to-day IT security, that's probably the foundation you're going to rely on the most. So I tell people, go get as much networking knowledge as you can, get your Network Plus, get your CCNA. That's going to position you well to finally move into IT security. And then from a perspective of already getting into IT security, the real important part is that you now have this security piece. Maybe Security Plus is your first step along that path. Maybe eventually the CISSP if you already have a lot of experience in the industry. But there may be in your organization certain tools that are used quite often for security. So you might be using a Palo Alto Networks firewall. Maybe it's good then that you get Palo Alto Networks firewall certified. Maybe you're using a particular SIM. Maybe it's important you get certified in that particular manufacturer's SIM. Maybe you're using a particular IPS function or a particular other security tool. Maybe it would be good to get certified in those security tools. So once you get past sort of the broader overall security certifications, you often find yourself getting very niche certifications in security so that you can then focus on solving security problems with the tools that you already have. So that's what I would recommend you do as well. From the chat room, did you once have a video series on Wireshark? No, I did not. Never had a video series on Wireshark. The best videos on Wireshark are Laura Chappell. You know, she just has the best stuff. I was in a, Laura and I and some others did a seminar series in South Korea and Japan for our armed services. And we were talking about security and firewalls and malware and all kinds of interesting things. And if you talk about Wireshark, she's the one that has the Wireshark books, the Wireshark videos. It's Laura Chappell's website that has all of that. She just has phenomenal resources for Wireshark. That's where I would go if I was doing anything Wireshark related. And really the primary reason I just never created a Wireshark series, you know, how are you going to do better than that? That's the real key. Will an N10-008 video series be posted on YouTube? Yes, it's already there. It's been there for months. Absolutely there. So I've got I've got lots of options for the N10-008, but the entire course has been available for months. It's already out there. There's a YouTube videos on my website. The index is there. If you want to go to ProfessorMesser.com, the video index is there. And of course, on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube, there is a YouTube list for that as well, for the N10-008. Usually when I make the list, and then I start adding to the list as I add videos. So if any of you are looking at what I'm working on most recently, I'm probably going to come out with an A+ course next. So this A+ course is going to have new videos. So there will be a new list on YouTube for that one. We got to add to the watch list and have all of those there. On my YouTube list, I'll bring this up on my screen so I can reference it. The N10-008 playlist is called, if I scroll, it is called CompTIA N10-008 Network Plus Training Course. That's what it's called. It was been out there. The last time I uploaded was in November to that list. There are 93 videos in that playlist. So plenty there that you could walk through. Plenty of Network plus all of these study groups that we're doing. There's another playlist just for the study groups for N10-008 to have that there. Lots to look at. Other questions, kind of a website question. Do I have dark mode option on my website? I don't currently have a dark mode option on the website. That may be something that we add later on. There's just nothing there currently. Do I need to buy the textbook, or are the videos enough to pass A+? Talking now specifically about the A+ certification. This kind of applies to Network Plus and Security Plus, or really any certification in general. There are no shortcuts. As much as I would love to tell you, yeah, all you need is the videos, you're good. You don't have to have anything else. First, that's wrong. And secondly, why would you do that? There's so many other resources out there. And I tend to find that videos teach me in a certain way and are able to get information across in a way that books can't do. However, books are able to teach me information in a different way that videos are not able to do. And I think you have to combine some of these tools together, again, to get your brain locked into some of these topics. Books give you more dense information in a shorter period of time. If I was, for example, to look at my Network Plus course, the current Network Plus course is 12, 13, 14 hours, something like that. You know, it's in the teens of hours. If I grabbed a Network Plus book and I just read the book to you in a video, page after page after page, it would be hundreds of hours of me reading this book. That's how big the difference is between all the content in a book and the content in a video. But it has to be that way. If you were watching a video, could you imagine watching hundreds of hours of videos just to get your Network Plus certification? No one would do that. In the same way, you need a book that's going to present to you all of the information as detailed as it can be so you can quickly read through it. So I always tell people, watch the videos, get a good book, get some hands-on, do some labs, and do some Q&A, some sample exams. Those are the 4 things you need. All 4 of them are going to be useful. So I think I need to really emphasize that to folks, that it's not just videos, it's not just books, it's not just hands-on, it's not just Q&A, it's all of them working together. Otherwise, you're kind of limiting yourself, and you're really not giving yourself all the tools you need to be able to do well on that exam. And I realize there's costs associated with all this, but it's a small investment for a certification that's going to allow you much more opportunity in the future. So you're making an investment in your future when you look at these different tools. So important. Other options, other questions. I know we're at the top of the hour. We'll get a little bit more, at least one more question coming through. Let me flip back through some of these. There were, for those of you working on Network Plus, this has come up before in the chat. I mentioned this at the very beginning 2 hours ago in the live stream, so I think it's worth bringing up again as we kind of focus on Network Plus is you've got these 2 Network Plus certifications right now. You've got the N10-007 and the N10-008. If you here in July of 2022 have been studying already for the N10-007, keep studying for the N10-007. Do not change over to a new version of the exam. I have many people email me all the time that say, I bought your N10-007 stuff 6 months ago. I've been studying for 6 months. I was just about ready to take the exam, and then I saw they came out with a new version. I'm going to switch everything over to the new version. And I have to send back an email, and all the email says is, no, don't do that. Don't keep going. You've already spent 6 months of your life studying this content. Go get your N10-007 exam, go take it, and earn your Network Plus certification. Because if you shifted gears, bought all new books, all new videos, all new study materials, all new labs, all new Q&A, there's an investment there. There's money going out the door. And you study all those for another, 6 months, 3 to 6 months. And then you take the N10-008 exam. You've now earned exactly the same certification that if you had just taken the N10-007 months ago. They're both the same cert. It's 2 exams, but at the end, when you pass them, it converges into the same piece of paper. Your certification doesn't say you took the N10-007 exam or you took the N10-008 exam. It just says you took the Network Plus exam and you passed it. And you are now Network Plus certified. Think of it this way. Let's say you took the Network Plus exam 6 years ago and passed it. You took the N10-004 or 5. And then every 3 years, you have renewed your certification and kept it up to date. Today, 6 years later, you are just as Network Plus certified as the person who goes out right now and takes the N10-008 exam and passes it. It's the same cert with the same qualification and the same thing you can put on your resume. One is not better than the other. One is not worse than the other. They are exactly the same. So don't worry about the version or wanting to jump into a newer version of the exam because you believe the new version has newer stuff and it's better. That's not necessarily true. And the few places where there are newer things on that exam, well, you can just read about the newer things and you're done. You don't have to take an exam on them. You just need that Network Plus certification. Now, if you're starting fresh, you have just arrived on this video, you're interested in Network Plus, you haven't studied anything, you haven't bought anything, you're at the very beginning of the process, maybe you start with N10-008 because you know the N10-007 is going to retire in June. Why would I invest in all of these things when I might not make it? I might not be done in June. So I always tell people you should probably give yourself plenty of time. So if you're starting right now, there's plenty of N10-008 books. There's plenty of N10-008 content out there. I think that's one that can absolutely be useful. So if you're starting now, start with N10-008 just because the timing works better. I think there are probably, there were a couple more books out there for N10-007. There's certainly more of a history of N10-007. And here, for some reason, is what people will tell you on the internet. And don't believe this for a second. People will tell you that now that a new exam is out, they make the old exam harder. It's like they've just made up a story about what they do with the old exam. No, they don't make the old exam harder. Nothing changes with the old exam. They're not investing any more time on the old exam. Trust me. It's exactly the same exam that you would take a year ago. I'm not sure where that one came from. It is not only unknown. There's no way you would know this because CompTIA doesn't share what they do with their exams. So it's complete speculation. It is an unfounded amount of speculation. But as it turns out, during this transition period, as I talk to people who take the 007, the experiences they tell me are the same experiences that we've had over the last 3 years. So it turns out nothing has changed with the old exams. And that one is actually empirical. That one we have evidence on. So I think some people would like to push you over to N10-008 for one reason or another. Don't let anybody push you into a version. Find the one that works for you. Find the one that has the materials that you're working with. Consider what you've done in the past and what you already own, and take the one that's most beneficial for you. Because in the end, both exams are pretty much comparable when it comes to difficulty level. A couple more questions. I know we're a little over time, but a couple more questions that come in. There is a question from Laurel in the chat room. Does CompTIA offer any accommodations? I have dyslexia, time constraints just create problems for me, and they absolutely do have accommodations. There is a process, forms, things you have to provide. It is on the CompTIA website, and it is a section that says testing accommodations for people with disabilities. There's a whole article out there that you will find. You can just Google that, testing accommodations, disabilities, and you'll be able to come to that exact page on the CompTIA website. And they talk about, at least for the U.S., the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, but I think it applies also to people who are not in the United States. And they've got, here's the documents you need, here's where you send them, here's the link you go to. There's a Pearson VUE link that takes you to their site, so you can go through understanding the test accommodations. Just tons of information there that can give you extra time, a separate testing room, different breaks. It just depends on what the accommodations happen to be. And they've got everything there. Yeah, there's the Canadian links that are on there too. So it's all there. So feel free to have a look at all of the different accommodations and what they have available on the CompTIA website and the Pearson VUE website. I do know people that have taken advantage of the accommodations, and it's worked out very well for them. That's where everything is. And it's sort of a process, and there's forms and things you have to do, but it's not difficult. It's not, they don't try to put up barriers. They're trying to make it easier for you. So have a look at that, and that'll get you started on understanding what you might need and the process you would go through. For folks that are working on Security Plus, in the chat room, I'd like to avoid Windows 11 as much as possible. Well, why? It's just Windows 10, isn't it? With another number on it. It's exactly the same thing, effectively. Can I mostly use Linux and Windows 10, or am I shooting myself in the foot? Well, for Security Plus, most of the utilities that you will see there work on any version of Linux, any version of Windows. There's nothing specific to Windows 10 or Windows 11 or Windows 7. You could probably even run Windows XP for some of these utilities on this Security Plus. Don't do that, but you could. So you don't have to run Windows 11. You know, you're comfortable enough running Windows 10 for a lot of the Windows-based utilities. Most everything on Security Plus and a lot of the new things on Security Plus run in Linux. So you're going to end up running a Linux VM and running some of these Linux utilities just so you can run Sniper or some of the proxy scans. A lot of the other utilities are all Linuxy kind of utilities. Some of them work over in both Windows, but there's not a specific Windows version. If you're running Windows 10, you're fine. You know, don't have to worry about it. You're good. There's very little you have to worry about from an operating system version. It's more about the concepts for security that are most important. So that's what I would recommend. That's what I would focus on. Question. I had my CompTIA Network Plus certificate in 2010. Do I need to renew it? Well, this is 2022. So your certificate would be, well, in 2010, actually, you have a Good for Life certificate, if my dates are correct, Network Plus GFL. The Good for Life certifications for A+ Network Plus and Security Plus are the ones that you earned prior to January 1st of 2011. So if you got your certificate in 2010, you have what CompTIA calls a GFL certificate. It's called a Good for Life certification. At that time, there was no 3-year renewal. You passed your Network Plus, you were Network Plus certified for life. Isn't that great? You're certified for life. Except employers don't want you to have a GFL certification. They want you to have what's called the CE certification for continuing education. And if you earn your certification and you look at the certification page, it actually says Network Plus CE. Has a CE at the end. That's what distinguishes your certification from the Network Plus Good for Life, which are just Network Plus. So what most employers would like to see is the Network Plus CE. They don't really want to see the Network Plus GFL because what good is it that you have knowledge on technologies from 2010? You're going to talk to them all day about Token Ring and Apple Talk. We don't use those anymore. So we need the latest certifications. That's why there's this 3-year update, so that you're always up to date on the latest technologies. And that's why I think that's important. If you were certified in 2010, you still get to keep your GFL. If you were to take the newest Network Plus and earn your CE, you would effectively then have both. You would have a GFL certification and you would have the CE certification. So it depends on what your employers are looking for, but I suspect the people that you're talking to would like you to have the CE. A good question would be to ask them. Hank in the chat room with a $4.99 super chat, not letting me go yet. Hank says, in a Windows Server environment, my goal is system administration as the next step. Good. Would you recommend a Microsoft System Admin cert first or Linux Plus before moving into the Microsoft certs? Well, if your goal is system administration for Windows and you're already a Windows Server environment, it's Windows, right? That's the one most people will want you to have. Most employers will want you to have. Now, if your employer has a Linux department and you have Linux system administrators and you tend to like that more, well, then maybe you start with Linux. I guess it really depends on what your personal liking happens to be. Which one do you prefer doing? But if you are in a Windows Server environment and you've got hundreds or thousands of Windows servers that have to be administered and they have plenty of openings for system administrators for these Windows devices, you should probably go get that Windows cert. Now, if it's different in the Linux, maybe they have fewer Linux seats available. Maybe fewer of those jobs are available, but maybe Linux Plus pays a little bit better because it's a little more specialized. Well, then now you've got to balance that out. Do I go with the more specialized? Well, you know which one I'm going to choose because I want the one with more money. So I'm going to go to Linux. Or maybe it turns out I look at long-term. Don't just look at the next job. Look at the one after that and the one after that. Maybe I look at this and I think, well, if I get the Microsoft System Administration, I can then leverage that into Microsoft Cloud and do a lot of Azure. Cloud pays more than Linux. Windows wins. See? You can play the game a lot of different ways. You just need to find the way that works for you. And both of those, the good part, Hank, is both of those are really good. You can't go wrong. Flip a coin, you're a winner either way. That's the way I would approach this. Is that and by the way, as they also say on the internet, why don't you do both? Why wouldn't you go get both of those? Go get them. Go learn all of that. Get as much in your pocket as you can. Put Linux in your pocket. Put Microsoft in your pocket. Take them around. Show them to people. That's the way to do it. Hopefully that will help you. Thanks for the $4.99 super chat, Hank. We appreciate it. Thanks for the question as well. It's a good question. It's one that I think a lot of people are challenged with when they're trying to figure out, what do I do next? There's no best answer. There's no right answer. There's sometimes a wrong answer, but there's no right answer. It's always an incremental move. And whatever you're doing now, you're going to be adding to it and adding to it and adding to it as you go. So that should help you at least give you some perspective on how I would do it. You've got a different set of goals. You've got a different set of objectives. Follow those goals, follow those objectives. They will always point you in the right direction. Well, I think that brings us to the end of that extra hour trying to get through Network Plus. We did all of those Network Plus questions in that first hour. We had some great questions here in the second hour. Network Plus is always a good one. I think it's one of those certifications that you use no matter what you do in IT. It touches everything we do. It's a great certification to have. Next week at this time, come back on Wednesday of next week at 12 Eastern. We currently have scheduled our Security Plus study group. I haven't even written the questions yet. I don't even know what the questions will be on. So come back in a week and we'll figure it out together. I'll have all new Security Plus questions from the SY0601 exam. We'd love for you to check back in. Of course, always check in with ProfessorMesser.com/calendar to know exactly when the next study groups will be. Sometimes these dates and times change. That's the best place to go to find out when the next live event will be. thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for the folks in the chat room. It's always a good time, and we love doing it. We'll see you in a week for Security Plus. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.